Boxing Day 2022. A fire breaks out in the remote red hills of Pilbara, Western Australia. The smoke is thick, black, toxic. No fire crews arrive. No helicopters circle. No hoses touch the flame. Because they can't. The fire is raging through Wittenoom, an abandoned town that the government legally won't let firefighters enter, because there something terrible coats the soil, the streets, it even lingers in the air. Fire might destroy what little remains, but it also threatens to release that poison into the wind. And that's why Wittenoom wasn't evacuated, because there's no one left to escape its grip. It sits as a silent, gutted, forbidden ghost town, and its story fills me with dread. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you things that you may later regret knowing, and today, let's jump straight into the video. Long before it became a cautionary tale, Wittenoom was just another name on a map. A tiny town in Western Australia, remote, sun-baked, and surrounded by raw natural beauty. In the 1950s, it was thriving. It was built to house the workers of a booming blue asbestos mine. Wittenoom then quickly became the largest town in Pilbara. There were children on bicycles. There were street dances, birthday parties, families gathering under the gum trees. To new arrivals like Olga Sota, who came from Austria with her husband and children, it felt like freedom. "We had a lovely, lovely little place," she said. "Magnificent gorges, great scenery, and people who made it feel like home. The roads ran straight, the skies went on forever, and the red earth shimmered in the sunlight. For many who lived there, Wittenoom was more than just a mining town. It was a dream made real. And if people noticed the fine blue dust that lingered on their clothes, that gathered on their porches, that lingered in the air that they breathed, they said nothing. And this wasn't because they were carefree, nor because they were making a point, but because no one told them that it mattered. In 1961, Wittenoom's population peaked at 881 people. Most of them had no idea that everything they touched, the soil, the gravel roads, even the playgrounds, was laced with microscopic fibers, sharp enough to embed and shred the human lung. The danger wasn't really visible, and that's where it gained its strength. The story of Wittenoom begins with a man named Lang Hancock. In the early 1930s, while flying low over the Hamersley Ranges, Hancock noticed strange blue streaks in the rock. He landed his plane, chipped at the formation, and discovered blue asbestos, also known as crasidolite. At the time, asbestos was prized. It was heat-resistant, strong, and seemingly perfect for insulation. Blue asbestos in particular was among the most sought after in the world. Soon, prospectors began descending on the region. Claims were staked. Mines opened in the Empire Gorge. The work was brutal, hauling rock out by camel team, clearing access roads by hand. But the reward, £70 a ton, and back then it was worth it. In 1943, the Colonial Sugar Refining Company bought up the local operations and turned the mining into a big business. With the help of subsidiary Australian Blue Asbestos Limited, they began constructing an actual town at Wittenoom Gorge, and then the people came. By the late 1940s, the region had transformed from a rocky outcrop into a company town with schools, homes, churches, even a gravel runway airport made from leftover asbestos tailings. To many, it felt like the final frontier, a place where a man could work hard, earn well, and raise a family in the dry dust of the outback. The problem was, that dust was going to haunt them for the rest of their lives. The blue asbestos being mined and processed, it wasn't just dangerous to the workers. It clung to their boots, their clothes, their skin. It rode home with them. It settled into mattresses, carpets, the kitchen tables and the food that they ate, and no one, least of all the government, warned them. Lang Hancock would later become famous for iron ore and for being the father of billionaire Gina Rinehart, but his legacy began with an insidious blue mineral. Wittenoom was never a quiet place. It echoed with children's laughter, school bells, and the deep rumbling of mining trucks. But underneath all of that, something else was moving. Those asbestos fibres, microscopic and lethal, filled the air. They were stirred up by the wind, carried on shoes, and packed into the very foundations of the town. The tailings, fine powdered waste from the mines, were used everywhere. They were poured into backyards. They were piled into playgrounds. They were spread across the streets like gravel. Children rolled in it, built forts with it. This picture shows children playing in a sandpit filled with asbestos. Some even stuffed it in their mouths, using it as chewing gum, and nobody stopped them because nobody thought that they needed to. When workers returned home from the mines, there were no decontamination procedures, and nobody wore protective gear. Families washed their clothes together, sometimes in the same basin used for dinner plates. People like Valma Mlodowski remember it clearly. Asbestos affected everybody, she said, from the youngest child to the oldest person. Her daughter, Tanya, was born prematurely in 1958, and she lived on this earth for just 2 hours. The hospital was too far, the dust was too thick. She's buried there, Valma said, in Wittenoom. I still want to go back, and she's not alone. So many former residents hold memories of joy wrapped in tragedy. Peter Holdsworth, who came to Wittenoom in 1962 at age 19, was nearly crushed in a mine collapse. Helen Osborne, a teacher, described it as the happiest time of our lives, but all that it would take for that to change would be for more time to pass. Even decades after the mine shut in 1966, people clung to the town, and you might ask why. Firstly, it was home, because the horror didn't arrive like a bomb or a blaze. It arrived slowly. It wasn't in a rush. And time can be easy to ignore when the sunsets are beautiful, when your neighbours and community are kind, and you believe that you were living a life better than you could have imagined. By the 1960s, whispers had started to spread. Doctors raised concerns. Union leaders sounded alarms. Some workers had begun coughing, deep, racking coughs that wouldn't go away. Others developed strange chest pains. But in Wittenoom, nothing changed. When the mine did shut in 1966, it was not because of health concerns, but simply because it stopped making money. And yet, the town didn't just give up and close down. The church still held Sunday services. Kids still raced their bikes down the asbestos-paved streets. There was even a dance hall that stayed busy most weekends, its bright lights cutting through dust particles that shimmered like glitter. Because the thing about slow disasters is that people can live inside them for years, and they don't even know that anything is happening. Government officials debated on what to do. They wrote reports, commissioned studies, and in 1978, Wittenoom was officially excluded from the tourism brochures. But nobody came to clean it up and make it good. Nobody came to help the families to move out. Instead, the government just slowly withdrew. They stopped investing in infrastructure. They closed the school. They shut off services. They took the town off the maps. By 2007, Wittenoom was officially degazetted, meaning in the eyes of the law, it no longer existed. Still though, some residents stayed. They ran a camping ground. They sold gems to passing tourists. They tended gardens in soil, laced with this nightmare substance. By 2015, only 6 residents remained. In 2017, that number dropped to 4, then 3, then 2, and then just 1. Lorraine Thomas lived there for over 40 years, refusing to leave and waiting it out until 2022. She was finally evicted by the government when she was 80 years old. Her daughter said the eviction could have waited, that she could have left on her own terms, but officials now insisted it was time. They boarded up her house, and the government declared victory. When the officers in full hazmat suits came to her door, she was confused, distraught. Her daughter described it as devastating. It wasn't necessary to put Mum through this, she said, but the state insisted that it was. Because by then, more than 2,000 people who had lived in or worked in Wittenoom had now passed away, and in their eyes, even one more would be one too many. Wittenoom never had a formal monument, but it did have its graves. There were dozens of them, some marked, some forgotten by time, and many of them belonging to children who never got to grow old. It was 1958 when Tanya Mlodowski was buried after just 2 hours of life, and today her sister Roman still visits the cemetery. It's one of the few places left untouched by the town's decay and destruction. Others like Helen Osborne carry invisible markers. She taught in Wittenoom during its final years, and has since attended funerals for at least 5 of her former students, all taken too young by asbestos-related illness. I sat with one, she recalled, a girl I taught in year 1. She died just a few years ago. I held her hand the day before. And these stories would echo again and again and again. Bronwyn Duke was born in Wittenoom. 16 members of her family passed from asbestos exposure, including her brother David, who passed away at just 48. We waited decades for them to close that place, she said. It's wonderful they finally did, but it came too late for us. In the end though, it wasn't bulldozers or government orders that really brought Wittenoom down. On December 26, 2022, Boxing Day, a bushfire swept in from the surrounding hills. No one fought it because no one could. The Department of Fire and Emergency Services didn't send crews. The risk of disturbing asbestos tailings was far too high. It might have looked like it was just a blaze, but in reality, it was a truly devastating biohazard. Flames tore through what was left of the town. Homes, shops, and shelters burned. The gem store collapsed. The camping ground vanished. By the time former locals like Amy Brogan arrived to see what was left, there was barely anything left standing. A lot of the buildings were close together, she said. I can't imagine the fire didn't spread to all of them. But even after this event, some still came. Amy herself had travelled to nearby waterfalls. But even despite the warnings, despite the sealed roads and signs, people still visit. Some out of curiosity, some out of adventure, others to grieve, and some were just drawn to the myth, the legend of a town swallowed by the mineral that built it. The government says that demolition is still underway, but really there's not much left to tear down. The land around Wittenoom was never truly empty. Long before Lang Hancock flew over the Hamersley Ranges, the Banjima people lived there. It really is their country, and after fighting for decades, they finally won native title over it in 2014. But what they got back was contaminated. 46,000 hectares, littered with 3 million tons of asbestos tailings, the largest toxic site in the Southern Hemisphere, and no government, state or federal has committed to cleaning it up. Maitland Parker, a Banjima elder who suffers from mesothelioma, has repeatedly begged the state to take action. They're not only destroying country, he said, they're destroying our beliefs and our culture. He hasn't visited the land in over 20 years, because he can't. It's too dangerous. The cost to remediate the area could run into hundreds of millions of dollars, so the government calls that unrealistic, but environmental experts call it overdue. Asbestos has taken millions of lives the world over. It still takes 250,000 every year. We probably all know someone that is touched, me included. And remember, don't take a chance with it. Even if you suspect that you find it in your property or anywhere, it's just not worth the risk. Make sure you contact professionals and deal with it extremely carefully. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.